It's strange, isn't it? How the calmest nights often hide the loudest shifts. You go through your day thinking it's just another evening. Same air, same silence, same tired thoughts looping like an old film reel. But something feels off. The energy around you starts to hum, like the world's holding its breath. And deep down, you can feel it. Something's moving. You can't explain it. Can't point to it, but it's there. That eerie stillness before a storm. That quiet heartbeat of fate, getting louder with every second. Funny thing about surprises. They don't come wrapped in ribbons or announced with trumpets. They sneak in when you're too tired to hope, too numb to care, too drained to even pray properly. It's like the universe waits for the moment you stop reaching and finally let go, because that's when your grip loosens just enough for something bigger to take over. You think you've given up, but really, you've just stopped fighting what's meant to find you. That's the beauty of it. The moment you release control, something shifts. Something starts moving in the dark while you're busy convincing yourself nothing ever will. You see, the biggest surprises don't show up when you're ready. They show up when you're real. When the smile fades, the mask slips, and you finally admit you don't have it all figured out. That's when the universe leans in. That's when heaven pays attention. Because it's not strength that attracts blessings. It's surrender. The moment you say, I can't fix this, the game changes. The storm doesn't calm because you demanded it to. It calms because you stop trying to control the wind. And that's when the surprise walks in, quiet and uninvited, but right on time. You've spent so long expecting disappointment that you almost forgot what hope feels like. You've rehearsed the pain so many times that peace feels unfamiliar. But tonight isn't about the old rhythm of loss. It's about the plot twist no one saw coming. Not even you. The kind that makes you laugh at the irony of it all. The kind that makes the pain finally make sense. Because surprises don't just show up to reward you. They show up to remind you that you were never forgotten. Every tear, every unanswered prayer, every silent night, they weren't ignored. They were noticed. They were noted. And now, the response is on its way. Dressed as a miracle you didn't even know to ask for. It's funny how people think blessings always look like light. They don't. Sometimes they come disguised as endings, rejections, and detours. You cry about what left, not realizing it was clearing space for what's next. You mourn the job, the person, the plan that fell apart. But heaven's there smirking in the background, whispering, just wait. Because the biggest surprises are the ones that come from what you thought destroyed you. It's poetic in a cruel sort of way. The thing that broke you ends up being the reason you rise. The loss becomes the reason you're finally found. You've been tired lately, haven't you? Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that lives in your bones. The kind that whispers, maybe this is it. Maybe this is all there is. But that's exactly when something changes. The night before the miracle always feels the darkest. It's the universe's way of testing your patience, to see if you can hold on when everything in you wants to let go. That's the cruel humor of it all. You think nothing's happening, but heaven's working double shifts behind the scenes. Threads are being pulled. Doors are being unlocked. Conversations are being had in rooms you don't even know exist. All you see is silence. All heaven sees is strategy. And when it hits, it'll hit differently. Not with fireworks or grand gestures, but with peace. A strange, steady calm that makes no sense after everything you've been through. You'll wake up one day and realize you're no longer angry, no longer waiting, no longer wounded by what once haunted you. The shift won't be loud, but it'll be real. You'll feel it in the way you breathe, in the way you walk, in the way you stop explaining yourself. That's how surprises work. They change you before they change your life. You become lighter, freer, sharper, more aware. You stop begging for doors to open because you finally understand. You are the door. The world won't understand it, of course. They'll say you're lucky. They'll say it came out of nowhere. But you'll know. You'll remember the nights when you thought it was over, when you begged for a sign and got silence instead. You'll remember every time you forced a smile through the ache, every time you chose faith, when doubt felt louder. And that's why this surprise will mean more than anyone else can comprehend. Because it's not just a blessing. It's a confirmation that your endurance was seen, that your patience mattered, that your pain wasn't wasted. The biggest surprises come when you've stopped expecting anything, because that's when your heart's finally empty enough to be filled. That's when you're open, not desperate, not demanding, just ready. Life has a strange way of giving when you're no longer trying to take. It loves irony like that. The moment you stop chasing what's running, it turns around. The moment you stop needing proof, it appears. That's how divine timing works. It rewards surrender, not strategy. It honors peace, not panic. And when it shows up, you'll laugh, because you'll realize the waiting wasn't punishment. It was preparation. The silence wasn't abandonment. It was setup. You were never behind, never forgotten, never overlooked. You were being saved for the moment that makes it all make sense. It's strange how we curse the waiting, how we despise the delay, how we beg for things to move faster, while not realizing that what feels like nothing is actually everything. You call it silence, heaven calls it setup. You think you're stuck, but really, you're being positioned. Every time something didn't work out, every time someone walked away, every time the timing felt cruel, that was the universe rearranging the pieces. What taking you off a path that would have destroyed you and redirecting you toward one that would rebuild you. You don't see it in the moment because pain blinds you. It whispers that you're forgotten, that your prayers got lost somewhere in the sky. But the truth is, silence is never rejection. It's coordination. It's the sound of destiny getting its act together before the curtain rises. You ever notice how when you force something, it breaks faster? The harder you push, the quicker it slips away. That's because blessings aren't earned through pressure. They're revealed through patience. The irony is, the very thing you think you're losing by waiting, time, is the thing that's actually working for you. Because while you're pacing in frustration, doors are being built in places you haven't even walked yet. You're so focused on what hasn't happened that you forget how much is happening, where you can't see. That's the trick of divine timing. It hides the process to protect your purpose. If you saw everything being arranged, you'd panic, you'd rush, you'd try to interfere. So heaven hides it behind inconvenience, behind stillness, behind what feels like delay. There's a kind of beauty in realizing that denial is often direction. Every closed door you cried about was a favor wearing disguise. The people who didn't believe in you, the ones who underestimated you, the opportunities that crumbled, they were never meant to carry the weight of your calling. You were trying to build castles on sand, and heaven had to let it collapse before you got buried in your own plans. You see, when the foundation's not right, the blessing becomes a burden. So the delay wasn't cruelty, it was protection. It was heaven whispering, "Not yet. You're not ready, and neither is what's coming." Because timing isn't just about what you want. It's about what can sustain you once you get it. You think about all the times you begged for something, only to thank heaven later for not giving it to you. That person you thought you couldn't live without. That job you thought was your breakthrough. That opportunity you thought was your last shot. Imagine if you had gotten it. Imagine if it had worked. You'd be trapped in something beneath your worth, smiling for the world while dying inside. But now, after everything fell apart, you can finally see it. How it all had to unfold the way it did. That's how divine setups work. They let you walk into disappointment so that when the real thing comes, you recognize it. But while you're in it, it doesn't feel poetic. It feels cruel. It feels like the world's playing a joke on you. You give everything, and it still falls apart. You do good, and you still get hurt. You keep faith, and it still rains. You start to think maybe you're cursed, maybe you're invisible, maybe heaven stopped listening. But that's the test. To see if you'll keep walking when the road disappears. To see if you'll keep building even when no one claps. Because patience isn't passive, it's proof of trust. It's standing still while the world rushes past you, whispering, "I know what's mine won't miss me." That kind of faith changes the game. It confuses darkness. It silences fear. It tells heaven, "I'm ready, even if I can't see it yet." And then, just when you've made peace with the waiting, the surprise hits. Out of nowhere, no warning, no announcement, no build-up. It just happens. The phone call, the message. The opportunity, the breakthrough. It arrives like a storm that's been gathering for years. And that's when you realize it was never late. It was always scheduled. You weren't being delayed. You were being delivered. Because what's meant for you can't come early. It can't rush into a version of you that still doubts, still panics, still clings. It waits for the version that's calm, clear, unbothered, the version that trusts timing more than control. It's almost funny how the things you once chased start chasing you when you stop running. How peace replaces pressure the moment you stop demanding explanations. How everything starts to align the second you stop trying to force it. That's the paradox of faith. When you stop fighting, everything starts flowing. Heaven doesn't move through desperation. It moves through alignment. And alignment only happens when you're still enough to hear what's meant for you. You don't have to chase the miracle. You just have to be where it expects to find you. So when things slow down, don't panic. When doors close, don't beg. When silence stretches longer than you can handle, don't assume you've been forgotten. That's not stagnation. That's synchronization. Heaven's building something precise, something personal, something too powerful to rush. Because what's on the way isn't small. It's not another lesson, not another almost, not another cycle. It's the thing that makes everything before it makes sense. And when it comes, you'll see why every no had to happen, why every delay was divine, and why you were told to be still. Because what's meant for you doesn't need to be chased. It just needs you to be ready when it finally arrives. It's strange, isn't it? How people only believe something is real when they can see it. They wait for the sign, the proof, the evidence. They say they have faith, but they only trust what's visible. They pray for miracles but panic when nothing moves. They forget that the most powerful shifts happen in silence, in shadows, behind the scenes. You think nothing's happening, but everything is. You think heaven's ignoring you, but it's working overtime to make sure what's meant for you comes dressed in perfect timing, not chaos. It's funny how people want the reward without the preparation, the crown without the cross, the light without the fire. Everyone says they're ready until life starts testing them, stripping them, breaking them down piece by piece. And that's when the truth shows. You see who actually trusts and who only pretends to. You ever wonder why sometimes everything has to collapse before anything gets better? Because some blessings can't fit into the old version of you. You can't carry divine favor with human baggage. You can't move to the next level while still clinging to what hurt you. So heaven starts shaking things loose, one by one, until you've got nothing left to hold but faith. That's when you start seeing differently. When you lose what you thought you couldn't live without and realize it was never meant to stay. When you're stripped of control and all you can do is wait. That's when strength stops being a word and becomes your heartbeat. That's when you understand survival isn't about escaping pain. It's about enduring it until it shapes you into something unbreakable. People think being lifted up means being celebrated. They picture applause, admiration, the spotlight. But the real lifting happens in silence, when no one's watching, when no one believes in you. The lifting happens when you're crawling through nights that feel endless, whispering prayers you're not even sure are heard. That's the kind of lifting that builds you. quietly, painfully, completely. Because when you rise again, it's not with pride, it's with power. The kind that doesn't need validation. The kind that doesn't need an audience. The kind that doesn't fall apart when things go wrong, because it knows who held you together when no one else did. There's something hauntingly beautiful about being broken and rebuilt. When you've hit the bottom, when you've seen every illusion shatter, when you've buried parts of yourself that will never return, that's when clarity comes. That's when you start seeing the world differently. You stop chasing people. You stop begging for love. You stop needing approval. You start realizing that if something leaves, it wasn't loss. It was alignment. You begin to understand that not every ending is tragedy. Sometimes it's divine punctuation. A way of saying, that chapter served its purpose. Now turn the page. You ever feel like heaven is silent? Like it's just watching you struggle and do nothing? That silence isn't absence. It's observation. It's watching if you'll keep trusting when nothing makes sense. It's watching if you'll keep your integrity when you could easily quit. It's watching if you'll keep walking when the path disappears. You see, heaven doesn't reward noise. It rewards endurance. It doesn't hand out blessings because you begged. It releases them when you've proven you can handle them. And sometimes the test isn't in the battle. It's in the waiting after. Waiting when you're tired. Waiting when you've cried enough. Waiting when you've lost everything, but still refuse to give up. That's when the shift happens. That's when the surprise unfolds. And when it comes, it doesn't come quietly. It arrives like lightning in a night sky that everyone thought was dead. The very doors that slammed in your face start opening. The people who ignored you start watching. The opportunities you thought you missed start circling back. That's the thing about divine timing. It never forgets. It just arrives fashionably late. And when it does, it doesn't just restore what you lost. It multiplies it. The kind of multiplication that makes people wonder how you survived, how you still smile, how you're still standing. They won't understand that you didn't just survive. You were rebuilt. You know what's funny? People will think it happened overnight. They'll see the breakthrough, the glow up, the success, and think it just appeared. They won't know about the nights you cried yourself to sleep, the prayers you whispered under your breath, the countless times you almost gave up. They won't see the pain that shaped the peace. But you'll know. You'll know how it felt to walk through fire without burning, to lose everything only to realize you never lost yourself. That's when you'll smile, not because it's easy, but because it finally makes sense. Because every delay was a setup. Every tear was a seed. Every setback was just heaven pulling you back like a slingshot. So when it launched you, you'd soar higher than anyone thought possible. That's the real surprise. Not that you made it, but that you became something greater than what tried to destroy you. That's what heaven was preparing. Not just a breakthrough, but a transformation. Because sometimes Being lifted isn't about going higher. It's about going deeper. Deeper into peace, deeper into purpose, deeper into the person you were always meant to be. And when that happens, when the storm finally clears and you look around, you'll realize the truth. Heaven didn't just lift you up. It rebuilt you from the ashes so you'd never fall the same way again. It's strange how people love to talk about blessings, but they never talk about the breaking that comes before them. Everyone wants to be chosen, but no one wants to be tested. They want the crown, but not the crushing, the glory, but not the grind. They see the reward, but not the road. It's funny, really, how people think elevation is just about luck, when in truth, it's about survival. You can't be lifted until you've been lowered. You can't rise until you've been buried. And you can't shine until you've walked through a darkness that almost consumed you. That's the real process. That's the real price. You see, when life decides to break you, it doesn't ask for permission. It just starts taking your comfort, your peace, your people. It rips apart everything you thought you needed until you're standing in a pile of what used to be stability. And that's when you start asking why. Why you? Why now? Why this pain? But that's the point. Because pain doesn't come to punish you. It comes to position you. It clears out what can't stay, so that what's meant to be can finally take shape. And the moment you understand that, everything changes. You stop seeing pain as your enemy and start recognizing it as your teacher. Because nothing teaches faster than heartbreak, and nothing builds character like betrayal. People will walk out on you and call it self-care. They'll stab you in the back and call it growth. They'll lie about you just to feel lighter about themselves. And you'll want to fight it, defend yourself, prove your worth. But the truth is, you don't need to. You see, when people try to destroy you, all they really do is reveal who they are and remind you of who you're not. They think they buried you, but you were a seed. They thought the dirt would hide you, but it's what's helping you grow. And when that growth starts showing, when heaven decides to lift you from the same soil they threw you into, the silence of your comeback will be louder than any revenge you could have ever planned. You ever notice how sometimes the people you loved the most are the ones who cause the deepest cuts? It's always the familiar hands that leave the sharpest wounds. That's because not every connection was meant to last. Some were meant to wake you up, to show you the difference between loyalty and attachment, between love and dependency. You can't carry everyone to your next chapter, and not everyone clapping for you wants to see you win. Some are just waiting to see if you'll fall again. But here's the secret. Once heaven decides to lift you, no one can pull you down. Not with gossip, not with envy, not even with hate. Because what's divine can't be denied. And what's written for you doesn't need validation. It's almost poetic, the way the story flips. The same people who ignored you start asking about you. The same ones who doubted you start quoting you. The same ones who laughed behind your back start pretending they always believed in you. That's what happens when heaven steps in. It doesn't ask for their permission. It just lifts you publicly for what you endured privately. And that's the moment they realize your silence wasn't weakness. It was preparation. You weren't done. You were developing. You weren't losing. You were leveling. Every rejection, every delay, every not yet was heaven's way of saying, hold on. I'm building something they won't understand. And when it happens, when that shift finally arrives, people won't know how to act. They'll say it's luck. They'll say you changed. They'll try to minimize it because they can't explain it. But you'll know. You'll know that every lonely night was necessary. Every tear was currency. Every heartbreak was construction. Heaven was building your foundation while the world was watching your collapse. That's why it takes time. Because strong things aren't built overnight. The process is painful because the product is permanent. You know what's interesting? Most people pray for blessings, but they don't pray for the strength to handle them. They want the success, but not the solitude, the miracle, but not the molding. That's why heaven doesn't always say yes immediately. Sometimes it holds back what you want until you're ready to hold it without breaking. Because elevation without preparation is self-destruction. So if it's taking longer than you expected, maybe it's not denial. Maybe it's protection. Maybe heaven is making sure when the blessing comes, it stays. The thing about divine timing is, it doesn't care about your schedule. It moves when it's supposed to. It shows up when it's ready. And when it does, it doesn't knock. It kicks the door open. You won't have to chase it. You won't have to prove anything. You'll just find yourself in places you didn't apply for, talking to people you once admired, living moments you used to only dream about. That's the beauty of divine lifting. It doesn't just bless you. It exposes the lies that were told about you. It proves that you were never the problem, you were the purpose. So when everything starts falling apart, don't panic. The breaking is a setup. The silence is strategy. The loss is leverage. Because when heaven gets ready to lift you, it doesn't announce it. It just does. And when it does, every person who thought you were finished will have to watch you stand in the very spotlight they said you'd never reach. They'll watch you shine from the same darkness they threw you in, and they won't understand how. But you will. Because the truth is, you didn't just survive the fall. You learned how to fly through it. When heaven moves, it never asks for permission. It doesn't send an email. It doesn't wait for approval. And it definitely doesn't care who's comfortable with the change. It just moves. Swift, quiet, unstoppable. One moment everything feels still, predictable, even boring. And then suddenly, everything shifts. The kind of shift you can't explain, but you can feel it in your bones. It's not chaos, it's correction. It's not random, it's rearrangement. Because heaven doesn't consult people before it promotes someone. It doesn't ask your enemies if they're okay with your rise. It doesn't check your past for permission to bless your future. It just decides. And when it decides, it's already done. People like control. They like to think they decide who wins, who shines, who gets the opportunities. They whisper in rooms. They form circles. They play politics. But what they don't understand is that the divine doesn't need a vote. The decision about your destiny was never made at their table. It was written in silence, long before they even knew your name. They can delay it, distract you, discourage you, but they can't deny what's already designed. That's the part that drives them mad. The realization that no matter how many lies they tell, no matter how many obstacles they throw, when heaven moves, it moves right through them. You ever notice how uncomfortable people get when you start rising? Not because they want you to fail, but because they want you to stay where they can understand you. People can handle your struggle, but not your success. They were fine when you were broken, relatable, easy to pity. But the moment heaven starts to lift you, they panic. They start to distance themselves, to question you, to call you lucky, because they can't explain what's happening. They thought your pain would keep you in place, but it became your passport out of limitation. They thought your silence meant defeat, but it was actually strategy. That's the thing about divine movement. It exposes people faster than truth ever could. When heaven moves, it doesn't wait for everyone to be ready. It doesn't need everyone's blessing. You ever notice how people hide behind smiles that don't reach their eyes? They wear their faces like costumes, pretending everything's fine while the world burns quietly behind them. Everyone's got a mask these days, not the kind you buy, no, the kind you build. One made of lies, convenience, and fear. You can see it in their eyes when they talk about being okay. You can feel it in the air, thick, heavy, fake. People don't even realize it anymore. They've been wearing it so long it's fused to their skin. Look around. Everyone's smiling, laughing, pretending they've got it all figured out. But if you look close enough, really close, you'll see the cracks. The tiny fractures beneath the fake calm. The small tremors behind the practiced smiles. It's all a performance. Everyone's wearing a mask, and the scariest part, they've worn it for so long they've forgotten what their real face looks like. They wake up, put on their roles, play their parts and call it living. But it's not life. It's theater. It's survival dressed up as stability. People wear masks to hide, to blend in, to protect what's left of their fragile truth. Some hide behind confidence, others behind sarcasm, a few behind religion or routine. It doesn't matter what the mask looks like. The purpose is the same. Keep the world from seeing the chaos underneath. Because if the world saw that chaos, it might not clap anymore. It might not love them. And that's the real fear, isn't it? Not being unloved, but being as seen. It's funny how people will do anything to appear normal. They'll lie about their pain, smile through their exhaustion, laugh when they want to scream. They'll say, "I'm fine," like it's a prayer, when really it's a confession wrapped in denial. Because the moment they admit they're broken, they lose the illusion of control. The mask is their armor. It keeps them safe from questions, from pity, from truth. But the longer they wear it, the heavier it gets. You ever notice how people become quieter the longer they wear their masks? They talk, sure, but not from their soul. Their words are rehearsed, safe, predictable. They stop saying what they feel and start saying what's acceptable. They stop being people and start becoming performances. It's mechanical. Smile, nod, agree, repeat. The world claps for the performance, but never meets the person underneath. And slowly, piece by piece, that real person starts fading away. They call it maturity, professionalism, social intelligence. But what it really is fear. Fear of exposure, fear of judgment, fear of what happens when the mask slips and the truth spills out. Because the truth isn't always pretty. It's raw, violent, unpredictable. It doesn't care about social cues or perfect timing. It just wants out. And most people spend their entire lives keeping it locked inside, terrified that if they ever let it escape, the whole facade will crumble. But here's the twist. The mask doesn't just hide you from the world. It hides the world from you. You start to see everything through its filter. You stop feeling deeply. Stop noticing the subtle shifts around you. You lose your sense of awareness because the mask dulls it. You can't see warning signs, can't sense danger, can't recognize truth anymore. You start mistaking comfort for safety, routine for peace. You tell yourself everything's fine because that's easier than admitting you've been living behind glass. And then something happens. A disruption, a message, a shake. Something forces you to look in the mirror and realize the face staring back isn't yours anymore. It's the version you built to survive, not to live. The smile feels foreign, the eyes look hollow, and for a moment, you see it clearly. You see how long you've been hiding behind what you thought was protection. But it's not protection. It's prison. You thought you were safe inside it, but it's been suffocating you slowly, quietly, with every lie you told yourself just to make it through another day. It's not that people love their masks. It's that they fear what life would look like without them. They think the mask keeps them strong, when in truth, it keeps them numb. Because being real hurts. Being real means bleeding in public, means being misunderstood, means losing people who only loved the version of you that agreed with their illusion. That's why most never take it off. They'd rather be accepted for their mask than rejected for their truth. But the world is shifting. You can feel it in the silence between conversations, in the way people avoid eye contact, in the way laughter feels forced. Something's moving beneath the surface, pushing for exposure. It's not interested in perfection. It's interested in truth. And truth has a funny way of tearing masks apart. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't need applause. It just shows up and starts peeling layers away until there's nothing left but what's real. The mask might have worked once. It might have kept you alive when life was too cruel to face unguarded. But now it's outdated armor. The world isn't asking for your performance anymore. It's asking for your presence. And that's what terrifies people most. Because when the mask falls, there's nowhere left to hide. No script. No role. Just you. The real, unfiltered, unmasked you. And that's when things start to get interesting. You know what's funny? Everyone says they want a sign, a warning, a message from above. Something clear, something loud. But when it comes, they pretend they didn't hear it. Because the truth doesn't always shout, it whispers. And whispers are easy to ignore when you're surrounded by noise. People drown in their distractions, so they don't have to face the silence. They call it staying busy, but it's really just running from themselves, from truth, from that quiet voice that keeps trying to reach them. The warning never arrives the way they expect. It's not a flash of light or some dramatic revelation. It's subtle. It's the unease in your gut when something feels off. It's the sleepless nights. The tension in the air before everything breaks. It's the feeling that something's shifting, that the ground beneath you isn't as solid as it used to be. But people shrug it off. They call it stress, anxiety, coincidence, anything but a sign. Because admitting it's a warning means they'd have to change, and change well. Change terrifies people more than truth ever could. You ever notice how people demand clarity, but reject conviction? They want truth to be polite, convenient, delivered with a smile. But truth doesn't work like that. It doesn't knock, it intrudes. It doesn't comfort, it confronts. And that's why warnings go unheard. Because they don't sound like what people want to hear. They sound like disruption, like discomfort, like something they'd rather postpone until it's too late. People always wait for things to fall apart before they listen. They need the noise of disaster to drown out the noise in their heads. When the warning is soft, they don't believe it. When it's loud, it's already too late. It's human nature. They mock the whisper and pray for the shout, not realizing the whisper was mercy. Because by the time it screams, it's no longer a warning. It's consequence. There's this arrogance that lives in people's minds, the kind that convinces them they're untouchable. They think signs are for others, not for them. They say things like, "I'll be fine. It's not that serious. I'll deal with it later." Later, the word people use to bury truth alive. But later always comes. It just doesn't come gently. Warnings aren't punishments. They're opportunities. Little cracks in the illusion that let light in. They come when you're on the wrong path. When you've ignored too many instincts. When you've stayed too long in a place that's already started decaying. But because they don't look supernatural, people dismiss them. They expect divine intervention to come wrapped in thunder, not in quiet intuition. So they miss it. They walk past miracles because they don't look cinematic enough. There's a moment before everything falls apart. You can feel it. The silence before the storm isn't peace, it's pressure. It builds slowly, testing who's paying attention. But most people mistake it for calm. They post photos, make plans, keep smiling, not realizing they're standing in the eye of something that's about to shift. That's what makes warnings so cruelly beautiful. They give you a chance to wake up before it's too late, but you rarely do. People are addicted to proof. They won't move until they see it. They won't believe until it's undeniable. But warnings don't wait for belief. They arrive whether you're ready or not. They don't need your attention to exist. They just need you to notice. But most people only start believing once they're broken. Only start listening once everything collapses. That's when they whisper to themselves, "I knew something felt wrong." But by then, the whisper's gone. And here's the trick. Warnings aren't meant to scare you. They're meant to prepare you. They come as tension, as timing, as something that feels too strange to ignore. But we label it coincidence because it's easier to pretend we're in control. Control, that's the illusion that keeps everyone blind. The idea that if you just plan enough, think enough, hope enough, you can avoid what's coming. But warnings don't care about your plans. They're not negotiable. They're directional. Sometimes the whisper isn't even in the world around you. It's inside you. That uneasy feeling when you're surrounded by people who smile too much, when you're chasing something that feels hollow, when every step forward feels like resistance. That's the whisper. That's your signal that something's misaligned. But people silence it with comfort, with routine, with distraction. They don't realize comfort is how truth dies quietly. The warning isn't there to punish you. It's there to protect you. It's the last whisper before the noise, the last pause before the fall, and the real tragedy. The signs were always there. In the timing, in the tension, in the quiet moments everyone's too afraid to sit through. The whisper is never the problem. The problem is that everyone's too busy pretending not to hear it. Protection. It's such a funny word, isn't it? People walk around thinking they're safe because they've built these walls. Money, reputation, followers, routines. But those aren't walls, they're illusions. You can't protect yourself with lies. You can't shield your soul with distractions. The world tells you to keep smiling, to keep pretending, to wear the right mask, say the right words, blend in. But real protection begins where pretense ends. Because how can you defend yourself from danger if you're too busy pretending it doesn't exist? Most people don't even know what they're defending. They fight for attention, validation, the right image. They guard their fake selves with their real hearts. They'll protect a reputation they don't even believe in, while their spirit starves behind the curtain. That's not protection. That's self-destruction with a pretty filter. You see, the moment you start pretending to be someone else, you stop protecting the real you. The truth becomes vulnerable, exposed. Because pretense doesn't block pain, it invites it in, dressed like comfort. They say masks are meant to hide, but they don't tell you they also suffocate. You wear them long enough, and you forget what breathing feels like. You start mistaking the act for identity. You start believing the version of yourself you built for survival. And that's the cruel part. Because while the mask keeps you from being hurt, It also keeps you from being healed. It's the same armor that stops the arrows that also stops the light. You can't claim to be ready for what's coming if you're still pretending you're fine. That's the lie that breaks people. The lie that says strength means silence, that survival means smiling, that faith means never feeling afraid. But pretending isn't faith. It's fear with makeup on. Real protection doesn't mean ignoring what's wrong. It means acknowledging it before it destroys you. Because denial doesn't delay disaster. It invites it closer. People mistake pretending for peace. They call it optimism, positivity, resilience. But deep down, they know it's just noise covering the echo of something they don't want to face. They wear a calm face, but their hands tremble when no one's watching. They post happiness, but cry in silence. And they tell themselves, everything's fine, as if saying it loud enough will make it true. But pretending never saved anyone. It only delays the moment you have to confront what's real. The truth is, protection starts when you stop lying to yourself. When you stop convincing yourself that everything's okay just to avoid the pain of admitting it's not. When you stop pretending the world can't touch you and start preparing for when it does. Because pretending doesn't protect, it paralyzes. It keeps you stuck in the same story, reading the same lies, hoping the ending will somehow change. But it won't. Not until you stop pretending you're invincible and start admitting you're human. And that's the irony. People hide their weakness thinking it makes them strong. But it's weakness that connects you to power. You can't receive strength if you never admit you need it. You can't be guided if you keep pretending you already know the way. The world tells you to be unbreakable, but the truth is, breaking is where the protection begins, because cracks let the light in. The same pain you hide from is often the shield being built for what's coming next. Everyone wants to be guarded, but no one wants to be exposed. Yet exposure is how you're fortified. You can't armor what you refuse to face. You can't heal what you keep hidden. That's why some people never find peace. Because they confuse pretending with preparing. They think if they act like they're fine, the storm will skip them. But storms don't skip the silent. They hit hardest where the truth's been buried the longest. You think the world will protect you if you fit in, if you say the right things, if you keep your head down. But safety doesn't live in obedience. It lives in awareness. You can't see the threat if you're too busy performing. The performance might fool the crowd, but it won't fool what's coming. The danger doesn't care how convincing your smile is. It only cares how prepared your soul is. And when the mask finally cracks, and it always does, you'll realize protection was never about pretending to be untouchable. It was about being honest enough to face what you fear before it faces you. Because the moment you stop acting, the moment you strip away the noise and the lies, you see things clearly. You hear things you missed. You feel the shift. And that's when real protection begins. Not from the outside, but from within. Funny thing about truth. It doesn't destroy people, it exposes them. Everyone walks around terrified of being seen for who they really are, clutching their masks like lifelines, terrified that someone might glimpse the person underneath. But truth isn't cruel. It's just honest. It doesn't expose you to shame you. It exposes you to show you, to remind you of who you were before the world told you what to become. But no one wants that. They want the illusion, the polished version, the edited self that keeps them safe from judgment. What they don't realize is that the mask they wear to protect themselves becomes the very reason they can't breathe anymore. You see, people say they want truth, but they don't. They want comfort dressed as truth. They want reassurance disguised as revelation. They crave validation, not confrontation. Because real truth doesn't flatter you. It fractures you. It makes you uncomfortable, forces you to look at the parts you buried, the lies you told yourself to survive, the excuses you made to keep pretending you were fine. And that's what truth does best. It tears away the costume. It's not there to ruin you. It's there to reveal what's real after everything false falls apart. Most people are terrified of that moment. They spend their whole lives running from it. They think exposure means weakness, but the real weakness is living hidden. Because the longer you hide, the more fragile you become. Every mask adds another layer between you and your reality, and one day you wake up lost in your own performance. You don't even know who you're pretending for anymore. You've become a stranger in your own reflection, and all because you feared the truth that could have set you free. The truth is, masks aren't protection. They're prisons. They don't keep people out, they keep you in. You think you're fooling the world, but really, you're just fooling yourself. Every time you lie to fit in, every time you stay silent to stay safe, you build another wall between who you are and who you were meant to be. And the higher those walls get, the lonelier it becomes inside. You can fill that space with noise, attention, distractions. But deep down, you feel it. That ache that never leaves, that tension behind your smile, that exhaustion that sleep can't fix. That's what pretending does. It drains the soul drop by drop. And then comes the truth. It never knocks politely. It doesn't care about your schedule, your image, your excuses. It comes when it's time, and when it does, everything you've been hiding behind starts to crumble. You'll call it chaos, but it's really clarity. You'll call it punishment, but it's really purification. The truth isn't against you. It's for you. It just hurts because you've been living so far from it. You've built an entire world made of smoke and mirrors, and the truth doesn't play by those rules. It shows up, burns everything false, and leaves you standing there, bare and trembling, but real for the first time. People say the truth hurts, but that's not quite right. The lie is what hurts. The truth just removes the anesthesia. It makes you feel what you've been numbing. It wakes you up from the comfort of pretending. Because pretending feels safe, but it's the slowest form of self-destruction. It erodes you quietly until one day you realize you've spent your whole life protecting an image that doesn't even exist. And when truth finally reaches you, it won't ask for permission. It doesn't care how long you've been performing, how perfect your mask fits. It'll tear through it anyway. And in that moment, when the mask falls, you'll feel exposed, but you'll also feel lighter. Because pretending is heavy. Carrying lies is exhausting. You can't heal what you hide, and you can't grow in a costume. The funny part, the truth doesn't expose you to the world. It exposes you to yourself. It's not trying to humiliate you. It's trying to wake you up. To remind you that the power you're looking for isn't found in pretending to be strong, but in admitting you're tired. Not in acting like you've got it all together, but in accepting that you don't. The truth doesn't destroy your worth. It destroys your illusion. And that's the most merciful thing it could ever do. When the truth finally stands before you, you'll see it for what it is, a mirror. Cold, unfiltered, honest. It won't show you what you want to see. It'll show you what you need to face. And in that reflection, you'll finally realize it was never trying to hurt you. It was trying to protect the part of you that still remembers what it means to be real. People love to mistake stillness for safety. They see nothing happening and think everything's fine. That's the delusion that keeps them asleep, while the ground shifts beneath their feet. The signs don't always come with noise or chaos. Sometimes they come in silence. A calm so heavy it feels staged. That's when the real movement happens. Quiet, unseen, relentless. While everyone's laughing, scrolling, pretending everything's normal, something beneath it all starts to stir. But people only believe in motion when they can see it. They don't realize that the most powerful changes are the ones that happen before the eye can catch them. They call it peace. But it's not peace. It's the pause before the break. You can feel it in the air if you're paying attention. The atmosphere thickens, time slows, and your instincts whisper, something's coming. But most people dismiss it. They say, you're overthinking. You're paranoid. You worry too much. Because they'd rather laugh off intuition than admit the world is moving in ways they don't control. That's what comfort does. It makes you blind. It convinces you that quiet means stable, when in reality, quiet means pressure. It's strange, isn't it? How people ignore the signs until they're undeniable. They wait for explosions before believing in fire. They need proof before they trust their own gut. But by the time the proof arrives, it's too late. Everything they thought was solid begins to shift. People, opportunities, even their sense of purpose, all start to rearrange. And that's when it hits them. The silence wasn't empty. It was building. The stillness wasn't peace, it was preparation. When something divine moves, it doesn't announce itself with trumpets or neon lights. It slips through unnoticed, testing who's awake and who's asleep. You ever wonder why some people seem to sense things before they happen? It's not magic, it's awareness. It's what happens when you stop drowning in distraction long enough to hear the quiet pulse of what's coming. But most don't want to listen. Listening means responsibility. Awareness demands change. It's easier to pretend nothing's happening until the shift crashes through your comfort zone. And when it does, people panic. They call it unfair, unexpected, sudden. But there were signs all along. That feeling you ignored. That door that closed. That person who walked away. Every detail was a message, a realignment, a move in a plan bigger than your own. You thought you were losing, but you were being redirected. You thought you were forgotten, but you were being positioned. Because movement isn't always about motion. It's about rearranging what you can't see to make way for what you're meant to receive. That's why patience feels like punishment sometimes. Because while you're waiting, everything inside you screams for progress. You want proof that something's working, that your pain means something, that the silence isn't for nothing. But faith isn't about seeing. It's about sensing. It's about trusting the silence, even when it feels like abandonment. Because that's usually when the unseen is the busiest. While you're questioning everything, something greater is adjusting the pieces. You're not being ignored. You're being aligned. People think movement means chaos, loud, fast, dramatic. But sometimes it's gentle, deliberate, invisible, like roots growing underground. You don't see them, but they're expanding, strengthening, preparing for the bloom. And the people who can sense that, who can feel the quiet shifting, they're the ones who don't panic when the noise begins. They're the ones who understood that silence was never absence. It was construction. But here's the irony. The ones who mock the stillness will be the first to call it fate when it finally happens. They'll say, "You're lucky." It happened overnight, not realizing the overnight took years of unseen movement. That's what divine timing does. It hides its process. It builds in shadows so that when it steps into light, no one can deny it. And those who stayed still during the silence, those who trusted instead of trembling, will rise without explanation. The shift is never random. It comes exactly when disbelief is strongest, when faith is weakest, when hope feels foolish. That's when it moves, because that's when you're forced to stop pretending you're in control. The unseen doesn't move on your schedule. It moves when your heart's ready to receive what your ego would have ruined. That's the beauty and cruelty of it. It doesn't care about your timing. It cares about your transformation. So when everything feels still, don't mistake it for stagnation. That's the whisper before the wave. That's the breath before the storm. You can feel it if you listen closely enough. The subtle hum in the air, the weight in your chest, the sense that something just shifted, even if you can't name it yet. The unseen is moving right now, and those who can sense it will be ready when it finally reveals what it's been building all along.